and now we wrap up Thomas December 2017 with Journey Beyond Sodor, the CGI animated musical adventure based on the television show Thomas and Friends based on the Railway series by the Reverend W. Awdry. This movie stars a whole cast of great celebrities and deals with many traits that children have, such as autism, through the experimental engines. So what's this feature-length special like compared to the previous feature-length special? Well, let's go full steam ahead and find out. On his way to deliver a goods train to Bridlington goods yard in the mainland, Henry suffers a crash at Vickerstown station from a faulty signal has been taken to the steamworks for repair. Meanwhile, Thomas is fed up with James's constant boasting and is upset that the Fat Controller chooses him to take Henry's goods train to the mainland. So much so that Thomas decides to arrive at Vickerstown before James so he could take the train to Bridlington himself. However, due to the troublesome trucks distracting him, Thomas gets lost on the mainland and comes across many different characters including Beresford the crane, Lexi and Theo the failed experimental engines, Hurricane and Frankie who work at the steelworks, and Merlin, a third experimental engine who believes that he has invisibility powers. Hurricane and Frankie friendly invite Thomas to stay with them and offer to take his goods train to Bridlington for them. The next morning, after delivering his train to Bridlington the night before, Frankie convinces him to stay and help them as a favour. However, they refuse to let Thomas leave, so Thomas tries to escape and befriends the experimental engines with help to get him back to Sodor. And they also have to save James, who came to the mainland to find Thomas after he'd been gone for a few days and had also been taken prisoner by Frankie and Hurricane. And the whole adventure is full of musical numbers, surprises, new friends and new enemies. Story-wise, this special is better than The Great Race in my opinion. It just has a better story, and it has lots more songs compared to The Great Race. Journey Beyond Sodor definitely has a better story than The Great Race, but there's just some things about it that seem odd to me. But before I go into great details about other things in this special, let's talk about the new characters that they introduced. There's Lexi, voiced by Lucy Montgomery, who is a cab-followed engine. She's an eager and excitable engine. She is proud of being experimental and cab-forward, even though she is convinced this makes her an unuseful engine. She is upbeat, cheerful and outgoing, and likes to experiment with how she presents herself, often trying out different voices and how she phrases her expressions just to see which one she thinks works best. Lexi is not always confident, she gets things right, but she loves the excitement of anything new, is very sociable and keen to explore new things. Out of all the new characters in this special, I find her the most entertaining. And whenever she speaks, you could tell that Lucy Montgomery was just having a friggin' blast voicing this character, especially how she gets to try out various voices. And I'm honestly hoping that they give her more screen time in the future. Like perhaps giving her some screen time in the Big World Big Adventure spin-off that's soon to come out. There's Theo, an experimental railway traction engine who is very shy, extremely cautious and highly awkward. He has an unusual experimental drive system that does not always function the way it should. He finds it particularly difficult when going in reverse. This of course only undermines Theo's confidence, and he firmly believes that he cannot do anything, although this is not entirely true. Theo is quite thoughtful, but when he speaks he is usually direct and to the point, and sometimes blunt. This guy can be described by some people as a nervous wreck. And it's said that Theo displays personality traits of autism, making him the first Thomas and Friends character with a disability. And when I look at this guy, I just kind of think of Fergus, the traction engine from Series 7. But it is a very interesting design that makes him different from Fergus. And there's Merlin, voiced by Hugh Bonneville, who sees himself as a hero. He is proud and confident of his abilities, in particularly his special skill, the ability to make himself invisible. All he has to do is say invisibility on and shut his eyes and is convinced that nobody can see him. He knows he was specially designed in order to be hard to see, and his 3 funnels are the proof of that. And a lot of the fans were really disappointed that Merlin didn't get as much screen time as the other experimental engines, since he was in all the advertisements and all the posters of this special. So it's a real damn shame that this character didn't get a huge amount of screen time like Lexi and Theo did, experimental engine wise. But nevertheless, I really like this character. He just looks like he could be really fun to be around. And it's said that his design is based off of a wartime steam locomotive that was built to hide himself with steam during the war bombing, which could be the reason for his belief that he can turn invisible. And there's Beresford, a crane who is usually very lonely, having no one to talk to. with engines often passing through with other work. His rather aggressive way of getting to know new engines makes it hard for him to make friends, as shown by him dropping a fishing boat in front of Thomas and slinging Thomas up with his hook in a later encounter. But he's well-meaning, though jealous of the freedom engines have to go anywhere. And what I love most about this character is that he's based off of a rolling crane railway that's located in Bristol Harbour, where I live. And I will say that he's honestly not the strongest new character in this special, as he's really there as an obstacle for Thomas to meet and get past. But the way he speaks when he first encounters Thomas kind of puts me in mind of that caterpillar from Disney's Alice in Wonderland who keeps asking Alice who she is. And this guy does it in the same way. So not exactly a very interesting character, but a great obstacle for Thomas. Then there's the villain of the film, Frankie, a charming and intelligent diesel shunter who could be very demanding. A natural leader, Frankie actively takes charge of operations at the steelworks. She could be scheming at times, putting on the front to try and manipulate others into doing what she wants them to do. Frankie, however, is not mean at heart. She feels hard done by and rejected because there is more work to do at the steelworks than there are engines to do it. She would love to be free to go off making deliveries with Hurricane, but feels the only way she will ever be able to achieve this is by tricking others into doing the work she doesn't want to do. She's one of those characters who seems really nasty on the outside, but is really nice on the inside. Which makes quite a different villain from the previous villains of Thomas the Tank Engine and friends in the specials, like Diesel 10 and Sailor John and so on and so forth. She's really nice, but has devious ways of doing what she wants to do. And her schemes are joined by Hurricane, a very big tank engine with 10 wheels, making him probably the biggest tank engine ever, almost as big as Gordon. But Hurricane is also a big softy. Although his name sounds like a storm, Hurricane is gentle, level-headed and kind. He is happy to see Thomas and treats him from the start like a new friend. He is however very loyal to Frankie and follows her lead, trying his best to keep up with her plans and help her realise her schemes. Hurricane turns a bit of a blind eye to the mean side of Frankie, preferring instead to see her as a loyal companion. He is hard-working, easygoing, generally cheery, and his kindness cannot help but show through. And I've got to be honest, the first time I looked at this guy in the movie, I could tell that there was something going on with him, especially with that face he makes with those nasty-looking eyebrows. But compared to Frankie, he does seem to be nicer to Thomas when they first meet. And during the film's climax, he actually saves Thomas at the end. This just shows how much of a nice guy Hurricane really is on the inside. The villains of this film are really the only new characters to get really big developments. But all the other new characters are pretty entertaining, and it would be nice to see them again more often in the show. And this special has so many musical numbers in it. Like Somebody Has to Be the Favourite, showing off James's vanity, Who's Thomas, which introduces Brailsford and has the truck singing along with Thomas and Brailsford. The Hottest Place in Town, which is honestly my favourite and most catchy song in the whole special. I Want to Go Home, which is basically the sad musical number in the film that you'd expect. We Can't Do Anything, which is basically the experimental engines thinking that they can't do anything and Thomas trying to convince them that they can. And the most important thing is Being Friends, which is basically Thomas and James making up for their little quarrel during the special. And out of all the songs, The Hottest Place in Town is honestly my favourite one. It's just the most catchy out of all of them. And I love how it's used by Frankie and Hurricane to manipulate Thomas into staying at the steelworks and help them out. And they try and use it again on James, but James hilariously interrupts their singing and stops them in their tracks. And this special also saw the brief return of Rosie, voiced by Nicola Stapleton. And this wasn't exactly her official return in the series, since that was actually in Series 21, which explains why she got painted red. But I really love the exchange she has with James in the film. And even though it's a small amount of screen time, it's just really great to hear her talking again. And I love her red paint job in this. It really makes her the first engine to have a Northwestern Railway initials painted on her. Ever since they announced Rosie's return, I was all hyped up, ready to see her in action again. And even though she only got one speaking role in this movie, it's just really nice to hear her talk again after all these years. And yeah, let's talk about the infamous bouncing of the engines throughout this special. When I first saw some clips of the engines bouncing in this movie, I honestly thought they were just going to save it for the musical numbers. Sort of like how they had those wild and imaginative backgrounds like they did in Lost Treasure and The Great Race. But nope, they just had to have the characters bouncing every 5 fucking seconds in this movie. Now most people hate this because it's really unrealistic for the characters, since they didn't bounce at all in the original series or the series before this special. Now some people can get over the bouncing because of the entertaining story and characters, but for most people it is really distracting. And I'm one of those who's sort of in the middle. Enjoys the story but finds the bouncing really distracting. I swear to God, the more times I see the engines bouncing every like 5 seconds, it just puts me in mind of Chuggington. But I will admit, the troublesome trucks bouncing during the Who's Thomas musical number is quite funny in my opinion. So yeah, the bouncing can be really distracting, but if you could get over that, you're really going to like this special. And there's also the fact that Bridlington Goods Yard looks nothing like the Bridlington Goods Yard in the real world. A minor flaw, but it can be really distracting, especially when you know your railway yards. So if you could get past all the bouncing and whatnot that the engines do every like 5 seconds, this is a decent special. I just don't think it's really as good as some of the other Feature Length specials I've seen in the past, especially when you compare it to Lost Treasure. So despite the bouncing problems that most people have, Journey Beyond Serdor is a really well written and entertaining special. It's got great new characters, great musical numbers, and it's just great to see Thomas mostly on the mainland for the most of the special. And if you haven't seen this special yet, I highly recommend checking it out. It's really entertaining, especially when you could get past all the bouncing that's really unrealistic. And that's the end of Thomas December 2017. It's been a real pleasure going through Series 20 and Journey Beyond Serdor, and not so much of a pleasure going on with Series 18 to 12. But I hope you guys liked it, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas.